Hello, and welcome to the Learn to Code podcast here at 1 Month. Before I introduce my guest, I want to share a quick story about how I first heard about our guest today, Elliot Condon, and how his work really influenced and helped launch my career in many ways as a solo developer, a freelance developer making WordPress websites. So back around 2011, I had been developing WordPress sites for a few years. I had just broken out of my full-time job where I was making, I was working in Washington, D.C., and I was making these, big websites for governments and nonprofits and all this kind of stuff. And then I left because I wanted to travel. I wanted to just kind of start my own business. I got an LLC. I didn't know what I was doing. I just signed up on, you can get an LLC online overnight. It's not as hard as it sounds once you do it. And then I was like, let me see if I can get some clients. And when I started looking for clients, I was looking for clients who I could make really simple websites for, because that's what I was good at. I could do the design and the front end, the HTML and CSS, some JavaScript, and I could run it on WordPress and just make, I made hundreds of restaurant websites. I made websites for bands, these kind of things, stores, lawyers, like all this kind of stuff. It was so easy to just kind of launch these websites. Now, this is now in 2011, and I'm introduced to the founders of General Assembly. I'm working there, kind of also starting a startup, working out of it was a co-working space back in the day. And they asked me to develop what would be the second, version of their website. They want to launch a new website, basically. And I'm hired to make that website. And immediately I think, okay, cool, I'm going to make this on WordPress, right? And I did. We launched it on WordPress. Everything went well. It was really great. But the thing now was that General Assembly started to pivot. They started to change their model, and they wanted to offer classes, right? They started having these coding classes. And I was asked to augment the site, to take what we had, the basic WordPress site, which was just like a few pages and a blog and the simple stuff you'd expect, and now to add classes. Now, what's so hard about that? Well, think about it. What kind of data do you need if you're going to organize a page to sell classes? Let's think through that for a second. You need the title of the class and the description of the class. All of that's in WordPress for free. But now you also need other data like the price of the class. You also need to know when the class starts, the date, the time, maybe who the instructor is. There's all of this kind of, metadata that or data that goes along with this object that you need to store for every single course. And I was like, oh my God, I have this site on WordPress. How am I going to add all of these fields, right? Well, just around that time, WordPress, just a few years before that, WordPress had launched something called custom post types and custom fields, which is exactly what you would use for something like this. It was a little bit experimental, and they were just kind of growing into this. And I gotta be honest with you, like I started reading the documentation and trying it, and like it sort of worked, but it was just like a little clunky, and it was just like I felt a little bit like I'd hit a dead end. And that's when I came across something called advanced custom fields. Now, if you're listening and you're interested in possibly, launching a WordPress site or really getting into it, or maybe getting under the hood of a site that you own, Advanced Custom Fields, you're going to want to write that down. AdvancedCustomFields.com is a place, it's a free plugin that you can go to and just on the fly with like the GUI, which is point and click your mouse, you could easily add these fields. And so I was able to make this really kind of rich, content site for courses that General Assembly was then able to, have dozens of courses every week, selling them with all of this metadata, and it just looks seamless and beautiful on the site. And I really have Advanced Custom Fields to thank for that, and it was super great. And it also, allowed me to get all these different kinds of clients. Then after that, I could then take more complex sites, even working with a small bank. I mean, imagine like all of the data that goes into making a site like that. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with it. And Elliot Condon, he is the creator of Advanced Custom Fields. And the reason I told you that whole story building up to this is because he is our guest today on the podcast. And so in this episode, you will hear us talk about his building advanced custom fields, also how he learned how to code, of course, and some of the things that he's excited about in the WordPress community and how you can get started, if you're new to coding, how you can get started with WordPress and really kind of get the most out of it in the least amount of time so that you could be successful. So as you can tell, I'm really excited for our guest today, and I hope you enjoy this episode, me and Elliot Condon chatting about WordPress and advanced custom fields. Enjoy. Hey, Elliot. How's it going?
Oh, hello, Chris and listeners. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, we're here. I'm really happy to have you on the show. I want to talk about advanced custom fields. I think I'm going to call it ACF as we go forward. Is that the right way to call it?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so if we say ACF, you know what we're talking about, people. So, Elliot, what is advanced custom fields?
ACF, it's a WordPress plugin that extends and customizes the backend of WordPress. So when you first log into WordPress, you just started using it. Each page or post, has relatively simple content fields associated with it. So a page might just have a title and a content area. And really, that's it. WordPress is set up quite simply in that.
Yeah, I think that's what most people think about, because most people think about WordPress as a blogging platform. I mean, that's what it started as.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. So, WordPress does have its origins in blogging, and the backend hasn't changed too much since then. Actually, it's changed a lot very recently, but for a long time, not much really changed in the content area of WordPress. And so what ACF did and still does today is it takes those two fields that WordPress gives you, the title and content, and it allows you to add in infinitely more fields above, below, around, images, galleries, repeatable data, color pickers, date pickers, anything and everything you want.
Yeah, and I think the greater thing, what you like, why and what can you do with that? The greater thing is that now WordPress isn't just blog posts or website pages. Now you can really upgrade it to be like a fully functional content management system, is the way I would think about it. Like, just lots of different things you can now do with data that you can't do with just plain WordPress, which is why I really like the plugin.
Yeah, well, thanks. WordPress has really become this great framework to build websites with. And, that's backed up by it running, a third of, the top whatever websites on the internet. So it has this huge following. And because it has all these amazing plugins, ACF included, but, we have to give some shout outs to the other amazing plugins out there that make WordPress what it is. But really, at the end of the day, WordPress has become, with thanks to these plugins, a really easy CMS to use for developers to create anything from a simple website for like a local cafe to a really complicated listing website for maybe a real estate agent or a search engine for automotive applications.
Yeah, that was what I had in my mind. The image of I had once made a real estate website, and I did it using WordPress. And if you're listening along, you can imagine that when you're gonna buy a house, for example, there's all these parameters and fields. You want to know what year it was built. You want to know, I don't know, is it near a school? You want to put on a map. There's all this data that you have to kind of organize on the page. And I'm gonna just call it plain vanilla WordPress by itself can't do that. I think the real estate example is exactly like that aha moment. Like, oh yeah, how do you organize all that data on a page? And it's like, when I first saw advanced custom fields, I was like, this is cool. Okay.
The light bulb moment of when content and data kind of come together. Because like taking that real estate example, when you're talking about all those parameters, I'm kind of imagining like an Excel file or some kind of Google spreadsheet with all of these, rows and rows of data, and each one is a listing. And I think that would be, like a previous way of doing this, or maybe even if performance is like top of mind, it's actually the current way of doing it too. Um, but it's that same idea that there's all these parameters, all these content types, all these individual pieces of meta. And what ACF does is kind of this fluid layer that sits on top of WordPress and allows you to define all these metas and then connect the metas to the content objects, which are posts, pages, users, taxonomies, stuff like that.
That's awesome.
It's a really interesting world. I mean, I live in it every day, and it's really cool. Like I'm still interested in it after so many years. There's still so much to learn.
Well, yeah, I want to talk more about using WordPress as the CMS. But before we do, I just want to hear, how did you learn to code?
Yeah, cool.
Like, what got you here? How did you get here?
Let's take a trip down memory lane then. Um, we'll work. Maybe we should just go back to the very start. I think I learned to code at university, which is kind of late in the game a little bit because I would have been maybe 22 by that age, or maybe 20 actually. Finished high school around 18, and then I went straight to university for 4 years. So midway through that degree, we started learning programming. And so
What
my actual
language were
first
you?
experience with code,
Sorry, what language were you programming in?
yeah. So my first experience with code was, I think it was Java. I think it was Java. It was really like it was code. It wasn't visual.
Yeah,
It
that's not
was,
not an easy one. Yeah.
yeah, it was very logic based. And it was probably in the form of like, making a duck move around a square board type game thing. All that, if else nonsense that doesn't make sense for a long time, but when it does make sense, you kind of see the world in a different way. So yeah, so, I probably dabbled earlier on, like even maybe back in like late high school. I'm sure I dabbled with some code that would have been in Flash, because we did some kind of like interactive animation-y type stuff in one of the subjects, one of the IT subjects. And I'm sure I probably wrote some stuff like go to next frame, or play something in a little Flash object, or if
Was it?
anyone remembers Flash.
Yeah, I mean, Flash was an Adobe product, more or less, that you could make a timeline of animations, and for a long time, the entire internet was these Flash kind of website animations until around 2008, when Steve Jobs more or less killed it. That's the story I'm telling, because he didn't allow it on the iPhone, and then he was like, "No, we're just not going to do this Flash thing anymore." And you
Yep.
see it in videos sometimes now, but you don't see the animations. But yeah, that was a cool way to learn. I also learned using Flash because you could more or less like, yeah, animate a duck, I guess is the way that you put it. It's cool. It's a good way. What do you love about PHP, and what do you make of all that?
So what I love about PHP, it's like the DIYer's dream because anything's possible. It's it gives you access, like really basic access, and it gives you really deep access. What I actually like is how similar it is now to JavaScript. And keep in mind that JavaScript wasn't always the most popular language, and
Never.
JavaScript copped a lot of flack for the way it was written. A string is an object.
Oh
What's
yeah.
going on? Who wrote this language?
People
And
hated
now,
JavaScript. You're totally right. For years.
right? And now JavaScript, if you don't know JavaScript, well, who are you?
Oh,
So,
that's a good comparison. Okay, tell me more.
so right. So PHP. So what I've kind of learned out of all of that is that you can write in any language you want. Whatever you like writing in, that's the one for you. It really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks,
That's a good attitude.
because
Yeah.
anything can change. It all just changes on what framework comes out and what becomes popular.
I love that.
Uh,
Yeah.
right? But back to PHP, what I love about it, it's a great language for the web. It You can run it on pretty much, well, you can run it on any server, except a specialized JavaScript server. Um, you can run it locally. You can find hosting online. Everyone offers a really easy PHP hosting solution. So that's one nice thing about it is the barrier to entry to actually deploy it onto a real website, very low cost. The actual language itself, I really like the way it's written. You've got all these amazing functions built in. And, PHP for a while was a bit stagnant, but now it's actually moving a lot faster. The versions are getting rolled out. And thanks to the help of the actual web is driving everyone to move to newer and newer PHP versions, which have a lot more functionality to offer, and the syntax is getting better. Um, it's it's basic enough that it's a good entry to coding. The syntax is very obvious. The functions are obvious. The resources are plentiful. The resources are everywhere, so you can really find any answer to any question online to do with PHP. It's not a very specialized thing. There's lots of libraries exist for integrating with APIs or just even outputting a variable. Like it's just really easy to work with. I love things that have low barrier to entry.
Yeah, I really like that take on it because it is so easy to get started with. You can write it pretty easily. I like deploy it. That's a good thing that you mentioned because yeah, you could just get a PHP website like live pretty quickly. You're going to get very few errors, which in turn I also think is why a lot of people hate it. Or maybe in the past, you can correct me if things in the past few years have updated. But I think it was also because it was so easy. I think a lot of people were writing really sloppy code with it. Like anybody could do it. And then it was kind of like, oh, this PHP site is a mess because like some cowboy wrote spaghetti code all over the place and just want to, shoot him down.
Well, I think that's actually that's like a great point because let's talk about the timing of PHP. So, and it's like affiliation with that cowboy coding style
Yeah.
because everyone was using PHP, 10 to 5 years ago. Well, they're still using it now. I'm still using it now. WordPress is still using it now. But
Yeah.
let's say it had its heyday 10 years ago. And there were no rules back then. There was no framework. I mean, if you want to get nerdy, like, yeah, there's model view controller type stuff, but no one really was using it, at least not that I was aware of. Um, and so, yeah, people wrote really sloppy code. But at the same time, people wrote really sloppy JavaScript too, because it has the same ideas that it's very loose. It's like the
Yeah.
Wild West. You can build a really structured, beautiful city, or you can build the most random layout with like impractical roads connecting to houses up on a hill down into, it's really up to you. And I love that freedom. I love it's up to you to implement a clean framework. Um, it doesn't force you into using it because sometimes you need, the great thing about JavaScript that the reason why JavaScript now has become so valuable, not only just because of the amazing frameworks that people are building, but because it has such loose laws. It pretty much has no rules. You can access anything at any time, and you're not stuck into this like really hardcore fixed rule set of what you can access at any time. And there's no linear path of like how the loading of the website happens. It's like sporadic and it's freestyle. And you can definitely make it structured, like a lot of these frameworks do, but you can also just like get outside the box really quickly. And that's I think what's become really valuable to people because our websites, it's funny how, we get fixated on creating structure, and then we realize, oh, actually, that's got a performance cost. Like, actually, it's faster to be a bit loose and wild, and so that becomes popular.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just nice to have that freedom
Yeah.
in the languages.
What do you love about WordPress? Because your whole full time job now is developing plugins for WordPress. What do you see? What do you see in WordPress? Tell me a love story.
Yeah, it's a love story for
Tell me a
WordPress.
love story about WordPress.
Why is WordPress why is
Why
WordPress like a
WordPress?
good
That's my
option?
question. Why WordPress?
Why WordPress? Let's think about that. Okay, twofold. Two parts to the answer. The first part is resources. So I think the key to success for really anything is the easiness of it. And with WordPress, there is just almost unlimited resources to documentation, to training, to information, to questions. Stack Overflow is full of WordPress questions and answers. everything can be answered with WordPress. There's really no there's no point in WordPress where you come to a dead end. You can literally always find a way to solve whatever it is you're trying to do. So I love that the documentation is there, not only just from WordPress, but from the community. I mean, there's so many people using it that you can get lost just reading about people's ideas and solutions. So that's one thing. The other thing is actual WordPress, the framework, the design behind WordPress, not visually, but structurally, um, is great. And it sits in that cowboy style, that kind of loose style that allows for access to anything and everything with low cost and low barrier to entry. So as a developer, WordPress is a great option as a CMS because you can't get stuck building with it. You can customize it to do anything you want. You can create the exact HTML that you want, which means you can style it exactly as you want, and you can solve every problem. So, for creating a website for today that relies on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I mean, that's the world that we live in. WordPress is just the perfect, framework that sits behind that can just allow it all to happen.
If I'm learning to code and I want a job as a developer, as a programmer, or just to make websites for friends or for business, what path would you take to start learning? Like, would you just start with WordPress, or do you need to code to even be able to start using ACF? Like how do I kind of get to the place where I could make websites that are really complex and beautiful on WordPress? What's that like?
Yeah. I think, having gone through the whole system from, self-taught to now running a company that helps other people build these websites, I think the best way to go about it is to start with the final product, which is the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript, and to learn them properly. And so to build static websites, just HTML websites, and build them until you start to see, until you start to hit walls, until you start getting frustrated at having to hand code the same thing on every page. Why do I have to copy and paste the header onto every page? Surely there's a better way. Well, guess what? There is a better way. You pull that header out into a separate PHP file and you include it into all your different pages. And look at you, you've just optimized something. Do that same with the footer and the sidebar. And you want to give this to your client and you don't trust that they can edit HTML, which is a good thing. Your clients shouldn't know how to edit HTML. Okay, well, now you need something in between. Now you need something in between your client and their HTML. That's WordPress. So when you hit that wall, that's when you implement WordPress and you go, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to take all my HTML, I'm going to turn that into a WordPress theme. Super easy. Just almost copy and paste it into a folder. Rename some files. And now you start swapping out all that hard-coded text that you wrote. You start swapping that out for ACF fields. And honestly, it's just one line of code to output a field. And you create that field in WordPress and you paste your text back in there. But now your client can log into WordPress, update the text in a beautiful, safe little text area, and it updates immediately onto the front end of the website. So I think that just going through a natural path of when you need that next thing, that's when you implement it. I think diving straight into the WordPress deep end and trying to build PHP straight up, that might be a bit tricky. But if you start, with the HTML and then you just grow from there, I think that's the best way to go about it.
Cool. So if I was building a WordPress site, like a custom theme, for myself, or for a client that's custom, meaning I guess custom, just to be clear, it's it means you're not just buying a pre-made theme. So you can buy, I guess, millions, I guess at this point, pre-made themes. But let's say I wanted something unique to my brand. What would be the toolkit for making that happen? Maybe who would I need to hire, or what skills would I need to have? What plugins do I need? What does that look like?
So I would create the HTML, CSS first, then install WordPress. And WordPress comes with a default theme. And each year they release a new default theme. So at the moment it's the 2019 theme. And this theme, what its purpose is to demonstrate the current functionality that is available in this year's version of WordPress. And so it's probably as complicated as it can be. It's broken up into small chunks. It's modular. It is difficult for it would seem very overwhelming, I would say, to a newcomer. Like if you looked at the 2019 theme, you'd probably be like, whoa, this is too hard to work with. And that's literally because it's showing the worst case scenario, which is the most complicated use of all functionality possible. It tries to keep itself like quite minimal, and it is minimal and bare bones, but it's not minimal compared to what your website needs.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is I would duplicate it. So I'd duplicate the 2019 theme, and I would delete every file from it, and so it's just a folder now. I'd rename the folder as well. So essentially, all you've done is create a new folder in your themes.
You're talking about the themes folder specifically.
I'm talking about the themes folder. So in WordPress, you've got a folder called themes. That's where you put your themes. And one theme is active at a time, and you can swap between them, which is pretty cool.
Got it.
And so I would use the 2019 theme as a reference guide. And so what you start doing is you take that HTML that you had written and you start cutting it into sections. You start burgerizing it, as I call it. You take the header, which is the top of your burger bun, you put it in the header, and you take your footer and you put it in the bottom burger bun. And you take the rest and you chuck in the index.
So basically you're saying learn by breaking the theme, which
totally
is really good advice. That's pretty much how I learned. I love this idea of taking the 2019 theme, because you're being given something that's like, this is, I don't know, is it like a dictionary? I don't know what the analogy is, but it's like, this is like the right way to do everything. And then you're like, I'm just going to mash it all up. I'm going to take out and see what happens, and it's by like seeing things break that you start to get, so like, and it's free to use WordPress. I mean, you can just start doing this right now, and it will make errors and be like, this is broken because this is missing. You're like, that's what that does.
Yeah, exactly. And so you've got that 2019 theme sitting next to your theme as a constant reference. So you look at your header.php and you look at their header.php and go, why are they calling this PHP function in their header to generate a body class? Okay, cool. Well, I'll just copy and paste that into mine. And now all of a sudden I've got body classes dynamically generated. Oh, cool. That was really good. And so you start just like looking through their code, looking through your code, seeing the difference. And you look at their index.php and you go, they're looping. There's this thing called the loop. They're looping over something and then they're outputting it. Okay, cool. I don't really know what that is yet. I'll go research what the loop is. And that's just WordPress's kind of architecture design system for outputting the current queried page or post content.
It's like the heart of, I think you're not serving it. It's
the
heart
is the heart.
It is the heart of WordPress. It is what makes
it's great.
WordPress.
Like WordPress really understands content, like web content. They made some great decisions early on in the way that it provides the functionality that you need. In the same sense that PHP made some great decisions early on what functions to provide as a server language. So it's good. So, and then, you just go down to learn as you go. But you mentioned like what would be the tool, like the tool set to go with. And I was just thinking, like, the first thing you should do is go download an application called Local by Flywheel. And what that does is that allows you to run a WordPress site on your computer. You don't need a server. You don't need to pay anything. It's completely free.
This is localbyflywheel.com.
Yeah, local.flywheel. Let's just double check.
I'll put all the links. Also, anybody listening, the links, the transcript, all of this will be in the show notes, so you can get this after.
Awesome. It actually is localbyflywheel.com. So this is a beautifully designed user interface app for just quickly spinning up a WordPress site. It does everything for you. And I think this is the best way of getting into it. I'm not sure if this is Mac only or if they have a PC version. I hope they do. If they don't, there are similar user interface things that exist. So this already gets rid of the boundary of do I need a server? Which server do I go with, etc. So you download this, you spin up WordPress on your site. It's not costing you anything. No one can access it, just you. And now you can start playing with WordPress. You've got the files, you've got the URL to this spun up
That's super
WordPress site.
cool. I've never used Local by Flywheel. So this is, I can download this and then I can edit like just basically locally on my computer, which is what local means. I can just start editing and running a WordPress installation. Is that basically what it's doing?
100%. Yep. So
Oh, that's cool.
basically, it spins up a fake server environment on your computer without any of the crazy looking terminal code that you might think you need to type in. There's absolutely no commands. There's just a nice big button that you press,
Oh, cool.
and it's good. It does an amazing job, and it is just a great tool at getting WordPress on your computer so that you can start using it.
I love
So now
that.
you've got access to the actual folder for the website with all the files, and you've got access to the URL of your website. And so you can log in, you can start using it, you can start editing the files. Install ACF. I'll plug my own software. I
Yeah.
think you should install ACF just from the get-go. It is a free plugin. There's also a professional version, but I think if you're starting out, there's no need for the professional. Just go to free. And this will allow you to, when you inevitably hit that wall of, oh, I need an image up in my hero area, ACF will allow you to customize that edit screen in the back end and it'll allow you to put that image field in there so that you can select it. And ACF will also give you the really simple function for outputting that image field into your template, into your theme. And so alongside, installing ACF, obviously have a quick look over the documentation. We've got some getting started guides that'll kind of explain a little bit about, how the templating system works, how it integrates into WordPress's templating system. Other plugins to install. Another obvious one is called Yoast SEO, and this just takes care of all of your SEO. Obviously, this is a local website, so like SEO is obviously not that important. But when you do deploy this, it's good to have that all set up, and so
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
correct meta tags
Once it's
and
on
the
the
title,
web,
it's all
it's
generated.
you've already gone through the work of getting, it's ready for the web. Yep. I like that.
Yeah, and really, during the development of your website, you might realize, oh, I need a contact form. Well, WordPress has amazing contact form plugins. So you can just search, you can do your research, you can install that, and you just incrementally add what you need when you need.
What's one of
But
your
having
favorite
ACF,
contact forms for WordPress?
what do I recommend?
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've actually made a live site, but in the past I've used Gravity Forms.
Yep.
There's a new one called WP Forms. There's also Ninja Forms.
Hmm.
And Contact Form 7.
Yeah.
There's a lot of choice. So the great thing is they're all available online. They all have great documentation, but they have different features. So that's kind of up to the needs of your website, or maybe the available funding for the website will kind of determine
Yeah.
what plugin you
That
go
sounds
with.
great. Cool.
So yeah, local by Flywheel is going to make everything so much easier to just take that first step because, previously the local by Flywheel, if you want to work locally, well, you need to spin up a fake server. There's plugins like MAMP or XAMPP, and there's terminal ones now, which are quite really good as well if you know code. And that'll give you a PHP environment. It will give you an actual server where you can create fake websites, but it won't install WordPress. So you then have to download, you have to understand where do these files go, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, understanding kind of how the files are
Yeah.
loaded.
It's just a little
But
extra
it's
setup
just
if you're
nice for
going
that
that
tool to be
route.
taking care of you.
What are some of your favorite resources for learning WordPress?
Yeah, but that's a good question. So, I mean, I came from that DIY self-taught that time. And so Google for me has been the number one resource, which I know
Nice.
is, I know it's super vague, But I guess what I mean by that, why Google is so important in the searching process, is because there's so much valuable information on everyone's website. But now it's funny because that's where I grew up in that time when we didn't necessarily have training courses. But now, you've got Learn to Code, and we did still have like CSS tricks, and we had websites similar, but now you've got like actual specialized training courses that take, everything will be spoon fed to you, which is amazing. Whereas you don't need to necessarily spend the extra weeks or months finding the problems and researching them as they come up. You can kind of be given a nice safe bridge to kind of cross that canyon straight up. You don't have to fall down 100 times.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
But on a serious note, though, like the WordPress website does an amazing job at documenting all of their functionality. So there's two sites. There's the WordPress, and they're both on the .org, WordPress.org. WordPress.org has a codex, which is the original kind of function resource. But now they also have a subdomain called developer.wordpress.org. And that's just a newer take. It's generated by the actual code within the plugin. I think it's a little bit nicer to understand, and they're just they're two independent resources for the same information. They've both got different takes on the information, and both of them are going to come up in a Google search. So WordPress do a really good job of explaining, their help guides, their functionality. But then I do suggest in today's day and age, just going with some training as well. I think that's just going to kickstart the launch very quickly. That entry into WordPress development.
Awesome. Well, hey Elliot, it was super great talking with you today. Thanks for coming on the show. All right, I want to thank Elliot for coming on the show. If you're interested in learning more about advanced custom fields, you could just go to advancedcustomfields.com. If you're interested in learning WordPress with me, I have a sweet WordPress course online. I think it's one of the best online because you will make and launch a WordPress custom theme and custom fields and all of that in less than 1 month. So all of that is at onemonth.com. You can go there and sign up for that. If you're new to coding, you may also be interested in the prerequisites for that course, which are HTML. There's an HTML course that you can sign up for, as well as, I guess that would be the only real prerequisite, but it may also help to have a little bit of JavaScript experience. It's not necessary, but it may just be helpful. So I hope you enjoy that. If you have any questions, you can leave those for us at teachers@onemonth.com. You can email us with any of your questions. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Please subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're listening. And damn, this is fun to make. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. And I will chat with you in the next episode. Goodbye. I'm becoming a robot. All right, bye. Ciao.